hope that's romantic all my life, surrounded by couples all the time. I guess I should take it as a sign. I'm feeling lonely. Oh, I wish I find a lover that could hold me. Now I'm crying in my room, so skeptical of Don't do it to me. Don't do it to me. Oh no no, oh no no. Don't do it to me. Oh no no, oh no no. Don't do it to me. Oh no no, oh no no. Don't do it to me. Oh no no, oh no no. Focused, I'm focused. She got a body like that, I ain't never seen it like that. Like a fantasy in front of me. I think there's something special's going down. That's what I think she foreign. I think she foreign. Got passports, me I'm on. Started slow, got faster. She gon' work some more, work some more. No stopping her now, no stopping her now. And then she started dancing, sexual momentum. Nasty but she fancy, lipstick on my senses. What's your nationality? I wonder if there's more of it. She's got my attention. She's confident. Oh no no, oh no no. She's confident. Oh no no, oh no no. And I'm down with it. Oh no no, oh no no. She's confident. You tell her the way she walks in the room. She said it's that first time. Yeah, I think she might have lied. Feels so good down. Yeah, and I don't know why I'm addicted. Yeah, something like a headache got me twisted. But still I gotta have it. Explosive, explosive. I can still smell her perfume. It's not hard to notice that I'm open, hypnotized by the way she moves. And she started dancing, sexual momentum. Nasty but she fancy, Mona Lisa masterpiece. What's your nationality? I wonder if there's more of it. She's got my attention. Hold up, 'cause she's confident. Oh no no, oh no no. She's confident. Oh no no, oh no no. And I'm down with it. Oh no no, oh no no. She's confident. I can tell the way she walks in the room. She said it's that first time. Yeah, I think she might have lied. Feels so good down. Yeah, and I don't know why I'm addicted. Yeah, something like a headache got me twisted. Yeah, still I gotta have it.
Tattoos, piercings, and she just learned to twerk. She ain't got a heart or an ass, just the brains. Got an ass 'cause her ass on a learning curve. And she let her earn the verb, I mean burn the word. That's only legal what the doctors know. Real deep pockets like a doctor's coat. Stay fitted like Diddy hair back trying to rock the boat. She the first maid when I rock the boat. She never forget to ride like a bicycle. She like plain strange chains with icicles. It goes her blank blank and rock and roll stick. I know, honey bunny, that's the funny thing. Got to twerk for the good fella. She money down with a money thing.
Oh no no, oh no no. She's confident. Oh no no, oh no no. And I'm down with it. Oh no no, oh no no. She's confident. You tell her the way she walks in the room. She said it's that first time. Yeah, I think she might have lied. Feels so good down. Yeah, and I don't know why I'm addicted. Yeah, something like a headache got me twisted. Yeah, still I gotta have it. Still I gotta have it. Still I gotta have it.
Alright.
Still I gotta have it.
Alright.
Oh no no, 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 oh no no. Still I gotta have it.
I got a condo in Manhattan. Baby girl, what's happening? You and your ass invited, so gonna get to clapping. Go pop it for a plan, pop it for me. Turn around and drop it for a plan, drop it for me. I went to beach house in Miami. Wake up with no
You say that I'm kinda difficult, but it's always someone else's fault. Got you wrapped around my finger, babe. You can count on me to misbehave. Prima donna girl, yeah. All I ever wanted was the world. I cannot bet I need it all. The prima donna life, the rise and fall. You say that I'm kinda difficult, but it's always someone else's fault. Got you wrapped around my finger, babe. You can count on me to misbehave. Prima donna girl.
I think about all the time, think you may need all of mine. Hate to say, you know that love is blind. I'm about to see, I close my eyes, they can't see you in it all. Most of them need dollar signs to make every day your birthday and every night your Valentine. But we tried that we could be somewhere the climate is warm long as you around me. I swear that everything will be just fine. I wish that we could take some time. Go anywhere, baby, I don't mind. Grown man in my suit and tie. Hey, there's no we without you and I. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Hey, there's no we without you and I. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Hey, there's no we without you and I. See my baby know when my baby go, I go. There's no better feeling, you know, when I'm next to her for sure. It's like I'm not hey, get this off my chest. I think I know I love it. I swear you're the best. Dancing all day, hey, take it off my chest. Oh yeah, I think I love you. Oh baby, maybe we tried that we could be somewhere the climate is warm long as you around me. I swear that everything will be just fine. I wish that we could take some time. Go anywhere, baby, I don't mind. Grown man in my suit and tie. Hey, there's no we without you and I. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Hey, there's no we without you and I. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Hey, there's no we without you and I. If we tried that we could be somewhere the climate is warm long as you around me. I swear that everything will be just fine. I wish that we could take some time. Go anywhere, baby, I don't mind. Grown man in my suit and tie. Hey, there's no we without you and I. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Hey, there's no we without you and I. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Hey, there's no we without you and I.
You're not listening to Cam Bam's radio.
Come out think it's so cute, and I think it's so sweet how you let your friends encourage you to try and talk to me. But let me stop you there, oh, before you.
Hello?
What happened?
Police. I don't know. This house is big. I don't know where my little cousin at. So can you please?
Where is the 3-month-old baby?
The baby, lady. The baby is on my mama's kitchen counter with his head smashed. Now I need you to please send me.
Okay, is it a male or female?
Know where my little cousin is at. Now if your little girl pop up with a weapon, I'm not gonna have a little cousin no more. So can you please? I know it's protocol. Can you please just send the police?
As disturbing as this find was, there was something even more terrifying lurking nearby. The killer was hiding somewhere in the house.
Look,
Is the baby breathing?
listen, lady. The baby is deceased.
Okay. All right, we're setting the police and an ambulance, okay?
Mama.
What is your name, sir?
Mama. Son. Hello.
What is your name?
I'm Robert Stewart.
20-year-old Deasia Watkins and her boyfriend James Brown welcomed their healthy baby girl Janiyah Watkins on December 4th, 2014. At first, everything seemed to be going well for the couple. Deasia was excited to become a mother, and after a tough childhood of her own, she vowed to give her child the love she'd never received. But no one would have ever predicted the sheer horror that lay ahead. It all began when Cheviot police were dispatched to the apartment where the family was living on January 25, 2015, around midnight. Upon hearing Deasia's screams and baby Janiyah's cries, multiple neighbors had become very concerned and placed 911 calls. Police soon arrived at the residence. However, Deasia refused to open the door. When officers threatened to force entry into the apartment, a young man opened the door, who was soon determined to be James' cousin, Chris Gully. Right away, members of law enforcement detected a strong odor of marijuana and noted Deasia's behavior seemed erratic. According to official case notes, as an officer tried to take Janiyah out of Deasia's arms in fear for the baby's safety, Deasia allegedly attempted to choke Janiyah, who was only a mere 7 weeks of age. EMTs were called to the scene to perform welfare checks on both Deasia and Janiyah. They eventually managed to take Janiyah, and Deasia immediately passed out on the floor, though the cause of her having lost consciousness is unknown. She was soon moved to Deaconess Hospital for psychiatric care, where she would remain on a 72-hour investigative hold. By the following day, her diagnosis had been established. She was suffering from postpartum psychosis. In addition, marijuana was found in her system, though she denied using it initially. She was placed on an antipsychotic medication. Due to side effects associated with the medication, Deasia was informed that she would have to discontinue nursing Janiyah. And based on Deasia's behavior, staff expressed concern to the caseworker that Deasia didn't seem to be grasping the seriousness of the situation. According to case notes, they felt that she was minimizing the incident, as she described it as no big deal. By January 30th, Deasia had returned to the apartment, and a safety plan was officially in place. She was allowed supervised contact with Janiyah, provided Deasia took her prescribed medication, and that either James or his sister Jaleisha was present at all times. But a visit from the caseworker reinforced the fact that Deasia wasn't on board with the plan. She hadn't filled the prescription for her antipsychotic medication. The caseworker reiterated that it was imperative Deasia take her medication, or it wouldn't be safe for Janiyah to stay in the home. James made it clear that she'd have to leave the home if she didn't comply, as the apartment lease was allegedly under his name. Deasia reluctantly agreed. She didn't want to be separated from Janiyah, and in addition, she felt she had nowhere else to go. Of course, soon these concerns would no longer be relevant, as disaster was lurking just around the corner. 1 week later, a caseworker completed an unannounced visit at the residence and was unable to verify if Deasia had filled her prescription. Over the next couple of weeks, everything continued to deteriorate. By the end of February, Deasia had abandoned the apartment and moved in with an aunt. It was clear that the current situation wasn't working, and it was about to become exponentially worse. Custody proceedings began on March 6th. As paternity had not been established and a mental health assessment needed to be completed on Deasia, the magistrate who presided over the hearing granted custody to the Hamilton County Department of Job and Family Services. During the interim, Janiyah was placed in the care of Deborah Stewart, Deasia's aunt. Neither James nor Deasia were allowed to see Janiyah, and Deborah agreed to the terms. During the caseworker's visit to her home, she confirmed that she'd not allowed Deasia contact with Janiyah. She was adhering to the agreement, and baby Janiyah was thriving. But in actuality, things weren't at all as they appeared to be, nor as Deborah claimed them to be. You see, Deasia had been spending time with Janiyah, a lot of time actually. She'd moved into Deborah's home days earlier. Deborah was coping with her own personal issues and health problems. Caring for a baby on her own was just too much to handle. So Deborah allowed Deasia to stay, despite the fact that she'd explicitly agreed not to allow her contact with Janiyah. 3 days after the caseworker's visit, a life came to a shockingly brutal end within the confines of Deborah's walls. A dispatcher received the frantic 911 call early that morning.
Thanks so much for being here, Robert.
Since 911, where's the address of your emergency?
Somebody please send the police. Please. Oh,
What is the address?
help me. 5957 Wildwood.
Okay, ma'am.
Lord, help me. Oh,
Ma'am,
my
who were you
God.
you were just talking to somebody. Who were you just talking to?
My son, he came over here. He found that I was asleep.
Ma'am, you weren't crying when I heard you talking to him. You were fine. And then when I picked up, you started crying. I need you to tell me what's going on.
The dispatcher is trying to make sense of the situation, but so far, nothing is adding up, and her skepticism is evident.
Oh, my God, help me.
Listen to me. I need you to stop crying, okay? Stop crying. I need you to take a deep breath and tell me what happened.
All I know is my son came in here and woke me up and said, Mama, the baby's dead. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Here, talk to my son, brother. Come talk to I can't talk.
How old is the baby?
The baby is 3 months. Oh, my God, what is you?
Deborah passed the phone off to her son, Robert, who'd arrived at the home along with his children just minutes earlier. It was his youngest child who had arrived in the kitchen first and bore witness to the terribly gruesome scene. Robert had immediately ushered his children out of the house to safety, then re-entered, desperate to locate his mother, Deborah.
Hello?
What happened?
Police. I don't know. This house is big. I don't know where my little cousin is. So can you please...
Where is the 3-month-old baby?
The baby, lady. The baby is on my mama's kitchen counter.
Deasia was nowhere to be found, and Robert feared she might have been in danger or had potentially been killed as well.
Okay, I need to know what happened to the baby.
I don't know what happened to the baby. I came into the house. She told me. Came into the house. The baby was on the counter. My mom was in the bed asleep. I woke my mom up and we calling you. That's all I know. I don't know nothing else.
Okay. Listen to me.
Look,
Is the baby breathing?
listen, lady. The baby is deceased.
The first 2 officers arrived a few minutes later and immediately entered the home. One officer made his way to the kitchen and quickly confirmed that baby Janiyah was deceased. Simultaneously, the second officer located Deborah in the bathroom of the master bedroom. Officers on scene radioed for additional officers to assist. Amidst the chaos and confusion, a few officers cleared the home and, in the process, they located Deasia. She was in the bed in her room, tucked under the covers, though her hair remained visible. Officers pulled the covers back, and Deasia, without so much as a word, was handcuffed and moved to the hallway and remained under the watch of another responding officer. The rest of the home was cleared without incident. As Deborah's house had become a crime scene that would require thorough processing, the parties were moved to the Criminal Investigation Section, known as CIS, at the local Cincinnati police station. It was there that everything began to unfold, but it would take some time to get to the horrendous truth hidden beneath a cluster of outrageous lies.
Scoot over a little more. I mean, you should try to move the table. I'll move this over a little bit to make it easier for her to get it.
Kill me. I know I did that, baby. Somebody help me. Somebody help me.
Mama, what does you want us to help you do? You can't bring back right. You know that. You go to and what
Can't take this.
and what about us? And what about your kids?
I can't.
What about your kids? What about us? You being real selfish.
No, I'm not.
It ain't nothing you can do. You trying to help. It ain't nothing you can do. Listen. Ain't nothing you can do. Take this tissue.
Poor baby.
Deborah's gut-wrenching cries can be heard from the nearby room where Deasia is seated, waiting for detectives to enter. Meanwhile, Deborah is beyond inconsolable.
This motherfucker just killed me. I can't take it. I don't think I can live through this. I don't think I can live through this. Oh God, I can't live through this. Oh, no. I can't do it. I can't do it. Poor baby.
My name's
That
Jen.
poor baby. That poor baby. That poor baby.
More than 2 hours pass before detectives enter the room where a stoic Deasia remains seated.
Hi. Are you Dee Dee? My name's Jen. This is Jake. Are you handcuffed? Would you be more comfortable if I took those off?
Right away, Deasia sets the tone for the interview. She doesn't speak or respond to detectives.
What hand do you write with?
You right or left-handed? Are you right or left-handed so I can uncuff the other hand? Just forget it. Jake's gonna read something to you, okay? Just pay attention to him.
All right.
The detective reads Deasia her Miranda rights.
Do you understand all that? Do you understand what I read to you? Or do you have any questions on it? Do you not want to talk to us?
Dee Dee,
You okay? Do you not want to talk to us at all?
Dee Dee. How do you spell your name? Spell your name. I can't help you if you don't talk to me. Okay? I want to make sure you get the help that you need, and I can't do that without even knowing who you are. All I know is you go by Dee Dee. So how do you spell your name?
But Deasia refuses to sign off on the form to acknowledge that she has received and understands her rights.
We're gonna take some pictures of you, okay? And we're gonna do some other clothes. I would like to sit down and talk with you and be able to see what you need that we can help you with, but I can't do that unless you talk back to me.
Despite the detective's efforts to elicit a response from Deasia, they are unsuccessful. Shortly thereafter, a team arrives to handle photographs.
Dee Dee, go ahead and stand up. Stand up. You have gloves on? Yeah. Make her stand up. Go ahead and stand up. Get this on. Let's do some pictures right now. Just
Sure.
can you prop your them right there.
Several minutes later, the photographs have been taken, and Deasia Asia's clothing has been confiscated and retained as potential evidence.
You drink any of your water?
Upon re-entering the room, the detectives continue to run through the gamut of classic interrogation tactics, but each proves ineffective. Nearly 6 hours in, they've gotten nowhere with Deasia, and the meeting comes to an end. After the unavailing attempt to gain information from Deasia, she was transported to Deaconess Psychiatric Unit, where, yet again, she received treatment and was kept for observation. 3 days later, she's back at the station, seated in front of detectives. And as you're about to see, this interview is in stark contrast to the one that took place previously.
You handcuffed?
Yes.
Let me take them off. You left or right-handed? Right-handed? And I'm going to read you a form here in a second. Okay, I'm going to ask you to sign it saying that I read it off to you and that you understand what's on. Okay?
Once again, the detective reads Deasia her rights. This time around, she signs the form, acknowledging that she has received and understands her Miranda rights. After some general questions, the detectives begin to work toward untangling the terrible mess that led to an unthinkable tragedy.
So we're going to talk to you about stuff that happened the other day. What I'd like to do is just go back, okay, way before any of that. We talked to James a little bit. You know, how'd you guys become boyfriend, girlfriend?
We just got to know each other first.
How long ago did you guys get that place together? Was that before you were pregnant or while you were pregnant?
While I was pregnant.
Was he working anywhere?
Yes.
Where did he work at?
McDonald's.
At some point, once you had the child, you guys went back to the house where you and James were staying together, right? So you guys went back there after you left the hospital? Okay. At some point in January, the police were called to that house there. Do you remember all that?
No.
You don't remember that very well? Do you remember after the police were called there? Like at that point, they'd taken you up to the hospital then, had you evaluated, and then you were able to go back home? Do you remember all that? Well, at some point, after I talked to James, he said that you moved out of that place and went to stay with one of your aunts. Which aunt did you go to stay with?
My Aunt Debbie.
Aunt Debbie?
During Deborah's interview 3 days earlier, her sister Cindy assisted in answering questions posed by the detective and addressed this very topic.
She called my sister one day about a couple weeks ago, asking could she come and get her. My sister, she's sick, she can't see. My sister said, I can't drive, I shouldn't be driving because I'm sick right now. She was crying so hard, like, please, Aunt Debbie, come and get me. And she went and got her.
So she came, according to James, she came and helped pack you up and help move your stuff over there?
Yes.
Okay, so you were staying there, like, during while the stuff was going on with the court between you and the baby and James, like they're trying to establish him as the father. Why wasn't he on the birth certificate? Did you guys have some type of fight or?
No.
No?
His ID had expired. He had his ID, but since it was expired, they said they couldn't do it.
So he couldn't sign the birth certificate because of that? Okay.
Though James had expressed his fear that Janiyah could potentially be taken from him due to this unfortunate issue, he'd failed to file for custody. The detective shifts to another important subject.
When you went to stay with your aunt, were you taking medication then?
Sure.
Weren't taking any medication? Were you supposed to be taking some?
Yeah.
Or why didn't you want to take it? Just didn't? Okay. How long were you staying there before the baby came and stayed there?
2 weeks.
And then the court gave custody to your Aunt Debbie, right?
Yes.
While it appears that Deasia is clearly under suspicion, perhaps not everything is as it seems.
I was down there talking to one lawyer. I come back and they don't talk to her into getting the baby. And my niece and them, they talked her into getting the baby. Her lawyer, and I didn't know what was going on. I just said we all pitch in and help because I work. She's retired, so I said, well, I'll pitch in. But I was like, no, we want the baby. We don't want her to go in the foster home.
Cindy explained that her sister Deborah was hesitant to take on the responsibility of caring for Janiyah. It seemed she felt obligated to head the effort, though she wasn't equipped to handle everything that came along with it. Maybe that had an impact on an extreme action she'd take in a matter of just a split second. one she'd come to desperately regret.
She got the baby, and so the one I guess she was supposed to be around 30, so.
Maybe that was part of the rules.
Yeah.
That's what I see my baby.
Before you ended up with the police, how long were you there with the baby?
8.
About 8 days? Okay. So the night the police ended up getting called to the house, we had talked to your aunt, Debbie, and she said when she went to bed that she gave you the baby. She said her eye was hurting her real bad. She was trying to take her medication. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And she said she passed the baby off to you. Is that correct?
Yes.
And with this line of questioning, everything begins to shift in an unnerving direction.
The night when all this happened and the police came, and you had the baby in your room, was the baby sleeping in a crib, in the bed with you, in the chair? Where was the baby at?
The crib.
It was in a crib in your room?
Yes.
One of the things we saw in the bedroom was a broken lamp. Do you remember how the lamp got broken?
No.
Obviously, at some point, something bad happened with the baby. Okay? Do you remember what happened?
No.
How did the baby get into the kitchen?
I don't know.
Do you think Aunt Debbie did something to the baby?
Yes.
You think it was Aunt Debbie?
Yes.
What do you think she did?
No.
The idea was unfathomable, but the alternative was even more unimaginable. Aside from Janiyah, Deasia and Deborah were seemingly the only individuals in the home around the time that the terror ensued. Detectives had to explore the possibility that the combination of Deborah's own personal and medical issues, along with the responsibility of caring for a baby, had caused her to snap. Perhaps Deasia's reality had truly become a mother's worst nightmare, and her own aunt had taken Janiyah's life.
I can't live with this. Oh my God. Just kill me. It's my fault.
How did you kill her?
Stabbed her.
She stabbed her?
Yes.
Do you know what she stabbed her with?
The knife because it was right next to her.
The knife was next to the baby?
Oh, the baby hand when I saw it.
The what? I'm sorry?
It was on the baby hand when I saw it.
So you went out there and saw...
No, when I heard her scream.
She hadn't seen the infant's lifeless body. She'd heard Robert's little girl's blood-curdling screams as the child entered the bloodied kitchen, and word of the grisly scene soon made its way through the home. But clearly, things weren't quite adding up.
How do we make that leap from the baby's acting like a normal baby to the point where we end up where it is badly injured and dies in the kitchen? That
I don't know.
you don't know?
I guess when Aunt Debbie was sleepwalking.
Okay. Here's where we're gonna take a little turn. That's not what happened.
The detectives have come to this meeting armed with indisputable evidence.
At what point during all this did you have the knife in your hand?
Of course, the detectives already know the answer to this question. They just need to hear it from Deasia.
I didn't have the knife in my hand.
You never had the knife in your hand, so those aren't your fingerprints that are on the knife in there? Are you sure about that?
Yes.
So if we pull that up and your fingerprints on that knife, how am I going to explain that then?
And my fingerprints just stay on there.
They just stay on there?
You know what I'm saying? My fingerprints are not on there.
No, but I'm telling you that they are. I'm saying, how do I explain that?
Should I check in it?
By checking it? Why, we did check it.
No, my fingerprints are not on there because I didn't touch it.
Okay. Well, you're thinking that your aunt did it, right?
Yeah.
Even though she was completely asleep, had no blood on her hands. You still think she's the one that did it?
Yeah, she sleepwalks.
She sleepwalks?
Yes.
Do you sleepwalk at all?
No.
How should Bill and I explain all the blood and stuff that was all over you? You don't know?
No.
Take a guess. What do you think would be a good explanation?
I don't know.
At this point, the detectives are done entertaining Deasia's absurd claims and denials. They employ some tactics that weren't successful last time around.
Do you know the difference between a bad person versus a bad thing? Like doing a bad thing, do you understand the difference?
Yes.
So there are people out there who are bad, okay? But there are people out there who aren't bad, who sometimes do bad things. And there's a big difference in that. And that's just what we're trying to find out. Do you think something was just going on that may have caused you to do this?
Yes.
What do you think was going on?
They were just trying to take my baby.
People were trying to take your baby from you and that upset you?
Yes.
Okay. Did that make you feel like if you did this to the baby, then nobody would take it away from you?
I didn't do nothing to the baby.
But detectives aren't yet able to overcome Deasia's denials, as she continues to claim that she didn't cause Jania's death. They continue at it and try a different approach.
I don't think you wanted anything bad to happen to the baby. I don't think that at all. You wouldn't have kept trying to stay there and be around the baby if you wanted something bad to happen to it. But you would agree that something very bad happened. Okay, and the baby is no longer with us and the baby's dead. Okay? But the manner in which the baby died was caused by somebody with very deep feelings, very strong feelings. There was a lot of angst in what was done. Somebody had very strong feelings towards that baby. Okay? And the person I find with the strongest feelings one way or other about that baby is you. You're the person that had the strongest connection. And what I'm trying to get to the bottom of what happened here, I think a big goal for the police is we want to know exactly what led up to this, what may have caused or what may have led you to react in such a way so that we can help somebody else from not doing it. If you could help another mother with the stuff that you were suffering from in the postpartum, wouldn't you want to do that? You know Aunt Debbie didn't do this. You don't want to blame it on Aunt Debbie. That's not going to help. Okay? Do you think I'm getting a little close there with the fact that you just don't want to believe you did it? How do you?
Yes.
So, when you think about Jania, how do you feel now?
I feel real sad.
Real sad?
And disappointed.
Why do you feel disappointed?
Because I just lost my daughter and I really love her.
And none of us in here doubt that you loved her. Okay? Just because of what happened, that doesn't mean you didn't love her. I want you to tell me what made you upset that night. What started all this? What happens that makes you upset?
Nothing.
Nothing upset you.
No.
The detective directly confronts Deasia with more evidence.
How did you end up? With all this blood on you when the police get there? You don't know?
No.
Well, how would you explain it? If you were the police detectives, how would you explain you with all the blood all over you? Why there's blood all over your room where you were sleeping? Why your fingerprints are on the knife?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
What do you think we think when we see all that?
That I killed me. That I was going to kill my daughter.
The detective strategically transitions to the topic of Deaja's loved ones, including James and her family, as he continues to build his case in hopes that something will trigger Deaja to tell the truth.
Do you still have feelings for James?
No.
You know what James asked about you?
What?
So when I talked to James, he said to me, "Can I go see her while you were at the Deaconess?" And I said, "Well, at this point, we're not letting anybody up there because people are concerned for your own safety from yourself, and they were monitoring you. And then Bill and I were concerned because we didn't want anybody else up there talking to you yet." But he asked a bunch of times, "Can I go see her? I think I'm the only one that can help her. I think I'm the only one that can get her to open up. I think she'll feel comfortable talking to me." I was impressed with James because given the circumstances of what has happened, I'm not too sure that I would be asking questions about you. He was upset about Janiyah, but he still was concerned about you. The rest of your family asked those same type questions. Were you surprised to hear that James and your family was asking about you?
Yes.
Okay. And to be honest, I was surprised too. I thought they would be really, really mad at you. But you know why they're not?
Why?
Because they don't think you're a bad person either. They don't think you're a bad person. We don't think you're a bad person. But we do think that you're responsible for a bad thing. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that or lie to you. And all the evidence and all the facts that we've collected and investigated goes right along the same line. It all points to you being responsible.
The detective explains that she needs to accept responsibility and deal with the consequences.
And we need to move forward from that. Not just for the court stuff and for police stuff, but just for the family and everybody else. Aunt Debbie didn't do this sleepwalking, did she?
No.
No, she didn't. What set this off? What happened? I do want to help you, but I want to help the other people too.
The detective needs to uncover the spark that caused the massive explosion of violence. But Deaja reverts back to her original claim. She just doesn't know. The other detective chimes in.
Do you understand Jake's trying to tell you that you're not here because if you did it. We know that this happened, that you had a part in this, okay? That you did this. He's trying to figure out, we're all trying to figure out what was going on, how or why this happened. We know Aunt Debbie didn't do it, and you know that too.
At what point, once you got to the kitchen, what happened once you got there?
This time, Deaja provides a different answer, and it's unbelievable.
I took that money and I killed her.
With her admission, less than 40 minutes into the interview, the denials cease. The ugly truth has finally been exposed. But it seems there's likely more to how this all came about. You recall the incident where the police were dispatched to the apartment as a result of cries and screams coming from within that night in late January. Well, as it turns out, it wasn't the first foreboding episode that had occurred within those walls. James shared some disturbing details with the caseworker at that initial meeting, shortly after Deaja had been taken off to the hospital for an evaluation. The beginning of 2015, which marked Janiyah's first month, brought along with it some changes in Deaja. According to James, she began speaking regularly about religion. While that in itself wasn't a cause for alarm, it was out of character for Deaja. Her unsettling behavior included claims that demons were present. There were times she'd be fine one moment, then uncontrollably crying the next. James had managed to capture the audio of one such occurrence as he clutched Janiyah in his arms, unsure of what else to do. He played the recording for the screener, and a hysterical Deaja could be heard screaming, "Why, God, why me?" What did I do wrong? Who are these demons? Please stop it. According to James, the incident, not unlike the one that occurred just hours earlier, was unprovoked and completely unexpected. That said, Deasia is now about to reveal her version of the slaying that ensued just days earlier, and she's poised to divulge every last nauseating detail. Please be advised that the following segment may be too graphic for some viewers. Deasia starts at the beginning.
I took Janiyah. So I changed her diaper. He kept screaming and running. And then I didn't get to change it, so I just threw it across the room. He didn't die, so I walked over there. I picked her up and banged her head and looked herself 4 times. Then, after she wasn't dying there, he clipped the big old stick and hit her in the head 4 times. She wasn't dying fast enough. And that's when I ran in the kitchen to kill her and make her off. Took the next one out, stabbed her in her head, told her to die. Stabbed her in the eye. She was still touching. Just cut her neck.
How many times did you cut to get her neck severed?
Until they sliced off.
Once you started stabbing her, what made you think you needed to cut her head off after that?
She wouldn't die.
She wouldn't die? How do you know she wasn't dead?
Because she kept breathing and
She kept what?
breathing and moving around.
She kept breathing and moving around?
Yeah.
Even after you were stabbing her?
Yes.
What did you do with the knife after that?
Put it in her hand.
Was there a reason that you did that?
Yes.
Why did you put it in her hand?
So it looked like she did it.
So it would look like she did it?
Yes.
And then what did you do?
I went back around.
Deasia's revolting account is consistent with the evidence found at the scene.
What made you do that? You don't know?
No.
Do you regret what you did? Do you feel bad about what you did to Janiyah?
No.
Why don't you feel bad?
Just
Do you blame Janiyah for something?
no.
What made you want to kill her?
I don't know.
Do you think you could have just given her to James instead?
Yes. I get in contact with her.
Couldn't get in contact with him?
No.
James,
How long before Robert showed up?
A good 15.
I'm sorry,
A good 15.
15 minutes?
Yes.
Did you hear the little kids scream when they came in?
They didn't even scream. The little girl said, "The baby."
So you heard all that?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
After catching a glimpse of baby Janiyah in such an utterly brutalized state, Robert had to divert his eyes.
What do you see when you look at the child? What?
Look, lady, I don't want to describe the scene. The screen is very, very bad, all right? The little baby head is open, like open. I'm not going in there to touch nothing because I don't want to mess nothing up. I'm not going in there to look because I already seen it, but it's very violent. It's a very violent scene.
We're going to step out for a minute, okay? Were you able to tell anyone else about this?
No.
Okay. We'll be back in a minute, okay?
Okay.
Would you like something to drink or anything?
No.
Water or something?
No.
Detectives exit the room and don't return for any additional questioning. Less than 15 minutes later, Deasia is headed for the Justice Center. Deasia's account confirmed the Hamilton County Coroner's report. Baby Janiyah had sustained stab wounds on both her face and head. When the coroner was asked if she could provide the number of stab wounds, she stated that she'd lost count. Janiyah's right arm was fractured. In addition, her head had indeed been severed from her body, as Deasia so callously described. According to the Hamilton County prosecutor, Job and Family Services did their job. Nevertheless, the haunting case is one you likely can't wrap your head around, and the question of why really wasn't answered, at least not completely. Deasia's initial plea in response to her aggravated murder charge was not guilty by reason of insanity, but the presiding judge ordered that she receive psychiatric treatment. It was later determined that she was competent to stand trial upon receiving the required treatment. However, a trial date never came. Deasia Watkins pleaded guilty to the brutal murder of her own infant in February of 2017. She received a sentence of 15 years to life in prison, with the possibility of parole at 13 years, as she was given credit for the time she'd already spent in custody. Due to the monetization policies of this platform, we had to make a lot of cuts and heavily censor the content of our videos. With an entire team behind the creation of each video and the cost of obtaining exclusive footage, we cannot afford to produce demonetized content. Therefore, if you would like to see less censored versions of our videos and even more exclusive content, you can do so by joining our Patreon. You will also be helping us.
All right, this is where we're at, Mr. Collier.
When a young Mennonite woman was found dead in Arizona,
He hasn't done.
He hasn't? He hasn't. Let's go.
the police were desperate to discover why someone would take her several hours away from her home in New Mexico, only to shoot her dead and dump her body.
Go.
Sheriff's office, get out of the car! Turn off the car! Step out now!
Little did they know that as they worked with the Mennonite community to solve this terrible crime, authorities would end up discovering a decade's worth of unsolved crimes, all leading back to one depraved man.
Get your hands up! Step away from the car!
On February 22, 2020, Cynthia Schultz was pleasantly spending her morning collecting firewood for her camp at the Sunset Crater National Park, around 20 miles from Flagstaff, Arizona. While out, Cynthia spotted a woman lying face down in the dirt. Thinking something might be wrong, she called out to the woman. However, when she didn't respond, Cynthia had a horrifying revelation. The woman was dead. Cynthia alerted the authorities, and soon the area was swarmed with police, trying to get to the bottom of this tragedy.
He didn't move or nothing. He just went and look, checked her, and okay. Rigid is a rigor mortis. She was real stiff, cold.
It was immediately clear to the detectives that this case was a homicide, as the victim had a gunshot wound to the head and her hands were bound together with duct tape. As they inspected the body closer, they noticed that the victim was wearing very modest and traditional clothes, which made them suspect she might be a Mennonite. Mennonites are a Christian denomination that practice a conservative lifestyle, dedicating themselves to their religion and only using technology that's strictly necessary, such as basic phones. Through forensic comparisons, the police were able to identify the mysterious victim as 27-year-old Sasha Kraus, a Mennonite woman who had gone missing from New Mexico on January 18th, over a month before she was discovered. While police may have finally been able to give their victim a name, it was now time to uncover her horrific story and find out the truth about how she ended up murdered in a national park nearly 300 miles from her home. Through interviews and investigation, the police were able to determine that Sasha was a Sunday school teacher who had worked and lived on the Lamp and Light compound, a Mennonite community in Farmington, New Mexico. On the night of her disappearance, Sasha was making a quick late-night stop by the Sunday school to finish an errand. When she failed to come home that night, Sasha's roommates alerted the community and the police were soon involved. Unfortunately, the case had hit a dead end fairly soon after beginning, and it seemed like Sasha had simply vanished into thin air. However, not only did authorities now have Sasha's body, they were also able to recover her phone, a key piece of evidence that could likely point them in the direction of their killer. Through phone records, the police were able to deduce that Sasha hadn't just vanished. She'd been kidnapped. As her kidnapper drove her to Arizona, Sasha's phone could be seen pinging off of select phone towers before it died. Throughout her entire trip to Arizona, there was only one other device pinging off of those same towers, and it belonged to a man named Mark Gooch. Mark Gooch was an airman working at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, and at first glance it appeared he had nothing in common with Sasha outside of his cell phone records. Nevertheless, Lauren Nagel, the lead detective on the case, traveled to Luke Air Force Base and sat down with Mark for questioning. Detective Nagel introduces herself as Detective Jones, as she got married at some point between this interview and her appearance in court.
Hi, thank you for your patience. That would work out that way. I asked you to come talk with me, and then obviously I get a phone call, right? All right, so I'm Detective Jones. I'm with the Sheriff's Office. I'm sure you're wondering what I want to chat with you about. Of course, I'm about to fill you in. We just got to go through some procedural stuff first.
The interview takes place in an interrogation room on Luke Air Force Base and is an ideal setup according to the Reed technique. A popular method of interrogation, there's no barrier between Detective Nagel and Mark, allowing her to observe all of his movements and nonverbal communication. The walls appear to be bare, which is intentional to minimize distractions. It's also helpful that there's only one detective present, which can make the interview feel less threatening. Additionally, Mark is seated near the door, which helps send the message that he's able to leave at any time. This may make him less defensive and more likely to talk. It can also help prevent any false imprisonment claims later. Detective Nagel and Mark speak briefly about his responsibilities as a mechanic in the Air Force before the detective asks about Mark's life back home.
So what did you do before Air Force then?
I worked in the diesel mechanic shop for about a year and did construction as well and grew up on a dairy farm. So.
Oh yeah? That's pretty cool. Do you have siblings?
Yes, ma'am. 6.
Oh wow, really?
Yep.
Okay, big family.
Yep.
Tell me about them, like how many brothers, sisters?
3 brothers and 3 sisters.
Okay, got it. And where are they at now?
All over the country.
All over?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you the youngest?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Who would you say you're closest with?
I don't know, we kind of got separated pretty good after everybody started moving out.
So you're not close with any of them though?
I talk with them on the phone here and there, but I'm probably closest. Maybe my brother back in Wisconsin.
Oh, gotcha. Which brother's that?
It's Sam.
Sam. Okay.
Mark comes across as a polite, well-mannered airman, but as we'll see over the course of the interview, this is just a facade.
So what do you do on your time off?
Play on my computer sometimes, play some games, go hiking as much as possible, but work on my car and bike a lot too. Try to stay active.
Cool. Do you like go to church or anything like that?
No, man, church closed down.
Oh, that's closed too?
Coronavirus.
Got you. Is that something that you did before it closed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I would attend church quite a bit.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking about that, what kind of religion did you grow up in?
We grew up in a Christian, I guess the religion, I guess is how you call it, but Christianity is how it was raised.
Oh, okay. Any like specific denomination of Christianity?
Mainly they were called Mennonites or Amish. I'm not sure how familiar you are with that.
Not really. Tell me about that.
But basically drive darker colored vehicles. We use flip phones when you have internet, stuff like that. So it was pretty sheltered, you could say.
Pretty sheltered.
Difficult.
I got it.
With this admission, the police now have another unexpected link between Mark and Sasha. They're both Mennonites. When the detective brings up the topic of religion, Mark starts to fumble with his words, indicating that the topic of religion may be something Mark doesn't want to talk about.
In that last 6 months, have you traveled out of state anywhere?
Yes, ma'am. When I came down here, I drove my car from Wisconsin down here.
Oh, okay. So you drove from Wisconsin to Phoenix?
Correct.
Anywhere else?
Pretty much all. State of Arizona. I try to do as much hiking as possible.
Mark doesn't know it yet, but he's just been caught in his first lie, the first of many. Using words like pretty much, mostly, and similar sentiments are qualifiers and often throw up a red flag to detectives. These words usually indicate half-truths or that there's something the individual may not wish to disclose. In this case, Mark saying that he pretty much stays in Arizona isn't true at all, and he's hiding something very big. He also uses filler sounds such as to delay answering, so he has time to think about his response.
You're probably wondering, why I'm here. So I'm a detective. I'm with Coconino County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
And I am working a homicide investigation.
Okay.
There was a girl named Sasha Krause that was killed. Did you hear about that case?
I've seen it in the news. Yes, ma'am.
Tell me what you know about the case.
It's basically the news report. She was from New Mexico, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she left home one evening, and they found her in northern Arizona, like Flagstaff area, correct?
Right. So that's the case that I'm working. Any idea now why I'd want to talk to you at all?
Probably because I was probably traveling up in New Mexico area, probably.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
As the detective reveals why she's here interviewing him, Mark begins to show more and more signs that he may be hiding something. When asked what he knows about Sasha Krause's murder, Mark vaguely says that they found her. This is a soft way to describe something as violent as a homicide.
And they found her in northern Arizona.
When suspects shy away from using realistic words such as murdered or killed, this can be a red flag for possible deception as they're minimizing the crime. Additionally, Mark uses the qualifier probably 3 times in 8 seconds.
Probably because I was probably traveling up in New Mexico area, probably.
So we've got these things called license plate readers.
Okay.
And your vehicle hit a license plate reader in that area. So tell me about that. You were traveling then. I'm a little confused because at first you said you hadn't traveled, but now did you go to New Mexico?
Yes, ma'am.
Your vehicle was picked up on that license plate reader in the general area on the same day actually that she went missing. And so what I'm doing at this point is I got to talk to everybody, as you can imagine. That's my job. Anybody who's in the area, anybody who could have seen something.
Despite the fact that Mark appears to be intentionally lying, Detective Nagel does a great job of calling him out for it while also remaining non-judgmental. She does this in order to keep Mark from feeling threatened and ending the interview, while also not letting him get comfortable in any of the lies he tells. The more someone repeats a lie, the more confident they will become. She also keeps him calm by not telling him the whole truth about why she's there. Although she's telling Mark that she's just interviewing everyone who got picked up on a certain license plate reader, we know that Mark is actually her #1 suspect, and that he was found through phone records. This is just one example of the ways detectives can lie during interviews in order to get a suspect to tell them the truth.
So why were you in New Mexico that day?
I was planning on going, so I was checking out Mennonite churches. I had traveled up to Flagstaff.
Mark takes a big pause after he says he traveled, followed by his foot twitching, and then he says to Flagstaff.
I had traveled up to Flagstaff.
This is something called a cadence switch, which is essentially a disruption in the flow and inflection of speech. In an interrogation, this can be seen as an indication of something being left out of a story, as the speaker paused and changed their speech pattern.
I was hoping that ski resort was still open.
Yeah.
They were closed due to coronavirus starting up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figured I'd go check out a Mennonite church up in that area. So I knew some people from Wisconsin that used to live there.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to go just attend because I really been missing that social life.
Yeah.
I used to have in Mennonite churches.
Is there any reason why you didn't tell me when I asked you if you've traveled? You didn't mention that to me. Is there a reason that you didn't?
No, man, I'm sorry. My memory just, I don't know. It's not what it used to be. I'm tired today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry if I failed to mention that. But
okay.
I was not trying to hide or withhold information.
Okay, thanks.
Once again, Mark is caught in a lie. While explaining why he was in New Mexico, he mentions that he was wanting to go skiing. However, the ski resort he drove to, the Arizona Snow Bowl Ski Resort in Flagstaff, was closed due to COVID-19 restrictions. In actuality, the Snow Bowl didn't close for COVID until March, well after Mark would have been there on January 18th. As he says this, he half shrugs with his right shoulder. It's barely perceptible, but lines up when he says, "I don't know." Internally, he does know, and is just making excuses, but he's not confident in his memory excuse. Mark is also sitting with his leg crossed in a way that creates a barrier between himself and the detective. He switched to this guarded position after he was asked about traveling. When questioned about why he didn't mention this trip earlier, Mark's military formality helps him appear more truthful than he's actually being. He refers to Detective Nagel as ma'am and immediately apologizes for not mentioning the trip because he was tired. Unfortunately for Mark, no matter how polite he is, this omission is definitely a sign that he has a reason to keep this trip a secret, and the detective has certainly picked up on that.
Do you remember that day then when you went to New Mexico?
I think I remember some of it.
So what time about did you leave here, Luke Air Force Base?
Probably left fairly early in the morning.
Okay.
And then what time did you say I was in the area?
I have to go grab I've got like the charts, the paper.
Okay.
What time? Well, let's go through the day. So when you say fairly early, what does that mean to you?
Probably about 7.
Okay.
7 is when I left to head up there.
Mm-hmm.
Stopped in Flagstaff for a while. Just got some, got some fuel, I believe.
This is one of the last fully truthful statements Mark says while recounting his trip to New Mexico. While he may think he's being sneaky with his lies, Detective Nagel knows a lot more than she's letting on and is ready to catch every lie Mark throws her way.
Did you go anywhere else while you're in Flagstaff?
No, not on the way up. Pretty much straight driving. Had a really pretty snow-capped mountain up there at that time.
So you stopped in Flagstaff, you got gas, and then you think that you drove directly to the church in Farmington?
I stopped in Farmington to get some fuel.
Watch how the detective suddenly starts kicking her foot. Since this discussion is about the scene of the crime, she likely feels a lot of pressure with these questions, trying to make sure she gets his story and also has what she needs to confront him later. With all of his deceptive behavior already, she's likely fairly certain that he is the person she's looking for, and these are really the high-stakes questions.
About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I had swung by the church to check their sign and see what time their services was, and they were, I think it was just Sunday evening.
At this point in the investigation, Detective Nagel has spent a lot of time at Sasha's church, looking for any sign of what happened to her on January 18th. In her entire time there, the detective has never seen any sign even somewhat similar to the one Mark is claiming to have checked.
Did you talk to anybody while you were there?
No, there was no one at the church, and I didn't want to bother anybody. So.
Did you like it? I don't know. What, is it a church that like what you grew up in, or different?
It looked fairly similar, but it's not really the same. So I'm a little disappointed with the whole long drive and everything. I didn't really see it as working out long term to make it there.
Yeah, that is a long drive.
It'd be way too far to drive every weekend. So I talked to my friend. He wanted to go hiking on Sunday, and I really wanted to make it for that. I work with him in the shop. And
who's that friend?
His name's Kefley.
Mark claims that he made plans with Kefley to go hiking the following day. However, according to Kefley himself, the two actually went to a swap meet, also known as a flea market.
From what I'm understanding, it doesn't sound like you were there for very long.
No, man.
And then where did you go after that?
I don't remember if I was going to go look for a hike, or did I head straight back? I think I started, once he called me about the hike on Sunday, I think I started heading back.
He called you?
Correct.
While you were over there?
Correct.
Okay.
According to Mark, Kefley called him to discuss plans. However, the phone records disagree with Mark. Mark and Kefley only texted that day, and in fact, the only person that Mark spoke to on the phone was his brother Sam. Not only did Mark and Sam call, but they actually called each other 6 times for a total of nearly 2.5 hours, which is longer than the two had talked on the phone for the last 6 months combined.
On the way back home, did you stop anywhere?
I don't know, I might have made it to Phoenix. On a full tank, I don't know. I'd have to check.
Okay. So am I understanding correctly, you don't remember stopping anywhere?
No, ma'am.
Is that fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember what time you got back here to home?
It was fairly late. It was probably 8 or 9 o'clock. When I got back.
Long day, man.
Yep.
Mark makes a lot of lip and mouth movements here, known as micro-expressions. One of the biggest indicators of deception and hiding something is a movement called disappearing lips, which Mark demonstrates. Once again, Mark's account of the trip contradicts his phone records. While he might say that he went straight home from New Mexico, The records actually show him stopping in Sunset Crater National Park for several hours. With Mark having officially told his story about where he was on the day of Sasha's murder, Detective Nagel is noticing more and more red flags. Mark consistently lies, hesitates, and supposedly struggles to recall information when he is asked about stops he made, times, and what he was doing at specific points throughout his trip. When a suspect has a memory of extremes, meaning their memory is either too good or too bad, this is seen as a red flag to detectives. Just over 2 months have passed since January 18th, so it doesn't make sense that Mark is struggling so much to recall basic information about his trip. Given that this trip was pretty out of the ordinary for him, the trip should actually stick out in his mind even more.
What do you think should happen to the person that did that to Sasha?
As far as, like, what are you getting at there?
But if we caught the person who killed her, what should happen to them?
Well, you should probably let the law deal with it. Or maybe the Mennonite community has a way of doing things differently.
In the Reed technique, this line of questioning is known as the punishment question, and it can be a good indicator of deception. Individuals who give vague answers are more likely to be deceptive than those who answer with strong, definitive punishments. Mark pauses for an incredibly long time after being asked what he thinks should happen to Sasha's killer, and he eventually settles on, "I don't know." This is the exact type of vague answer that sets off alarm bells for detectives when it comes to the punishment question. After a few more questions, Detective Nagel tells Mark that she's going to step out for just a few minutes to review her notes. After letting Mark stew for 10 minutes, Detective Nagel comes back in and gets ready to really take Mark's story apart and figure out what exactly it is that he's lying about.
On the way back, what time did you come back through the gate?
It was dark, possibly 8 or 9. Probably later than that, I'm not sure.
So what's like a reasonable time frame? So like you're saying around 8 or 9, like what's the latest you think you possibly came through that gate?
Probably could have been 1 or 2. 8 or 9 to 1 or 2 is probably the most time frame that I can think of.
Okay.
It was dark when I came through.
It's kind of a big time frame there though.
I understand.
8 p.m. to 2 a.m. is pretty different.
I understand.
Okay. So you want to stick with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Now that Detective Nagel has informed Mark his story doesn't add up, it's likely that he's going to respond with even less specifics than he was before, hence his 6-hour time span. If Mark is adamant that he got home at 8 p.m., but then video footage shows otherwise, it will reflect badly on his credibility. On the other hand, if he admits that it was 2 a.m. when he got home, then there's a large chunk of time that's completely unaccounted for between Mark leaving the church and arriving home. While Mark might be trying to avoid getting caught in a lie by avoiding specifics, in actuality, this just makes him even more suspicious.
So what if I told you that the time that you came in the gate that morning was 6:53 in the morning?
Would not guess it was that late.
That's a long time.
Yes, ma'am.
So how do you explain that?
I stopped and slept in the car. On the way back, I had trouble staying awake. Tried to stop and sleep multiple times, but that's couldn't really sleep. It was cold.
Okay.
On the drive back.
Okay.
Now, Mark has to scramble to fill in the gaps that Detective Nagel is pointing out. Mark claimed he left at 7 in the morning on January 18th, and according to the detective's records, he didn't get home until nearly that same time the following morning. Not only is this around 10 hours after the original time Mark gave for when he got home, but it's almost 5 hours after the revised time he gave. It's also highly suspicious that he has never mentioned this supposed nap he took in his car on the way home. And it definitely comes across that Mark is doing anything he can to try and cover up his lies.
Have you gone to Flagstaff any more than that one time?
No, ma'am. Except when I came down from Wisconsin to Luke. I don't remember which route I took coming in.
Okay. So after this New Mexico trip, You have not gone back up to Flagstaff
No.
again, is that right?
Not to my knowledge.
Mark saying not to my knowledge doesn't make sense here, because how could he travel somewhere without his knowledge? This is a selective memory statement, but in this situation, it also just doesn't even fit with the statement, and he would have been better off going with I'm not sure, or I don't think so, or some other selective memory statement. He must be starting to really feel some anxiety about this, because his thought processes are less logical and his word choices aren't great.
So I know that you went back up to Flagstaff a couple days later.
Okay.
And I've got a couple different ways to confirm that, like your gate checkouts and evidence that you were up in Flagstaff. So did you go back to Flagstaff for some reason a couple days later?
Possibly went for a drive. Went to go. I don't remember.
When asked about going to Flagstaff again, Mark hesitates for a long time before answering. Significant delays can be a red flag for deception. Some questions require thought, so it would make sense for someone to stop and think before answering. However, it doesn't take this much thought to remember if you recently went to a town 2 hours away from where you live, meaning that Mark's hesitation just comes off as suspicious. Clearly, Mark isn't going to be truthful about what he was really up to on January 18th. So Detective Nagel changes gears and starts asking Mark more about his Mennonite connection to Sasha.
Earlier when we were talking, you mentioned how when you're not born into the Mennonite church, we use that word outsider, like you're kind of an outsider compared to like people who are born in. Sasha was like that too. Did you know that? Her family was not born into Mennonite church. So I'm wondering if you're willing to kind of tell me. I noticed I just saw a little bit of an emotion in you when we talked about that. Is there something that happened to you in the Mennonite church that upsets you?
Not really. It was just a way of life, and I didn't really like it. I was happy to be out of it. My parents left the church.
By stating not really, he's denying anything happened to him, but not strongly. By using a qualifying statement instead of just saying no, it suggests that there is something, but he doesn't want to talk about it.
Okay. So Mark, what I do for a living is talk to people.
Understood.
And I just feel like I can read people a little. I know I don't know you. I'm not going to even pretend I do. But there's something there. And is it just something you don't want to talk about? Something that happened that made you leave the church?
No, ma'am. I pretty much left the church when my parents decided to leave.
Okay.
Mark uses another qualifier, but what is more interesting are his lip movements. It seems like his lip movements are his fidgeting behaviors, but he's probably had some training about not showing anxiety both in the home he grew up in, as well as in the military, so he doesn't have a lot of the bigger nonverbal cues that we look for. Yet these lip movements, which continue to return to the disappearing lips, make it clear that he's withholding information. It's almost like he's trying to hold in whatever it is he really wants to say. While Mark may be playing it cool, the detective knows he's hiding something. Before this interview even began, Detective Nagel was able to go through Mark's text messages and saw some concerning things regarding his views on Mennonites. In a text conversation, Mark and Sam are are told by their brother Jacob, a Virginia state trooper, that he had just given 2 Mennonites a speeding ticket. Mark and Sam are both overjoyed to hear this, and Mark even says that he hopes that Jacob treated the Mennonites like shit. Sam makes a point of calling the Mennonites cultists, giving some insight into how he and his brothers feel about the religion. In another conversation between just Mark and Sam, Mark tells Sam that his surveillance on the Arizona Mennonites that morning was boring. The use of the word surveillance was incredibly alarming to authorities, and clued them into the fact that he may have been planning some kind of attack on the community for quite a while.
We have a detective talking to Sam right now.
Okay.
In Wisconsin. Okay? And so I want you to know that for this main reason.
Ich habe actually auch wieder Probleme mit Kacken. Ich muss irgendwie seit neuestem viel auf Toilette kacken. Ich weiß nicht warum. Wo sonst? Nein, also ich muss sehr viel auf Toilette einfach. Deswegen.
Ich habe ein Baby geklaut. In GTA